Jiro here for Umbra Games with a review of Song of the Deep, a beautiful 2D item procedural adventure brought to us by the developers behind the first Spyro the Dragon games, Ratchet & Clank, and Resistance Fall of Man series, as well as the more recent Sunset Overdrive, Insomniac Games. So what brings a developer of AAA games back to the world of 2D on a current-gen console? Well, reportedly it was their passion project, the game they've wanted to make for quite a while, and they finally took some time to do it. So good on them. Also, for those of you that didn't catch it, this was the first console game I'm aware of published by the GameStop Corporation under their Game Trust Games publishing unit, created to help middle-sized developers. Song of the Deep puts you in the sub of Marin, a fisherman's daughter who waits on a rocky outcropping overlooking the sea every day, awaiting her father's return. And then, one evening, he doesn't make it home. So of course it's the daughter's duty to build a submarine from random parts lying around and go in search of her father to the depths of the ocean, finding pieces of ancient technology to tack onto her sub, discovering secrets and treasure all over, and making new friends. And also finding that all the stories that her father told her about sea creatures may not be as false as she originally thought. Now, in my opening sentence I use the term 2D item procedural, because I don't like the term Metroidvania. Sure, Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night are two of my highest rated examples of the genre, but we don't call Bayonetta a Devil of War. You know, Devil May Cry, God of War, yeah. Anyway, the main structure of the game is having a sizable map with an objective that must be completed to further your progress. To access the objectives, you often seek out additional items like a new weapon or a piece of equipment that allows you passage. For example, there are lantern jellyfish that block your path. Once you obtain the searchlights, you can shine them on the jellyfish to get them to move any place so that they're not stopping you. These blockades are often in the way also on finding the game's hidden items and treasures. Now, most of the main objectives in the game are linear, but at two different points they allow you to choose which of the three goals you want to knock out first. Unfortunately, those goals are often contained within a small subsection in three very far away corners of the map in an area you've already been to, but then you get a new weapon to access them. Also, with a couple hundred treasures to find, it kinda seems like Insomniac wants to torture you way ahead of time, because in early areas of the game, you're going to find things that you won't have the tool for until very nearly the end. Almost to a demoralizing point, thinking about all the places you're going to eventually have to tread back to as a completionist. The game does provide one warp per area to help with some of that navigation, and all the treasures and items are clearly marked on your map, accessed via controller touchpad, so remembering where to go back is done for you. The controls of Marin's sub are fairly intuitive, allowing you to move the left stick to propel yourself in any direction. Now, I did read a few reviews for the game, and I saw many sites complaining about this aquatic navigation. I was kind of taken aback a bit because I don't remember ever really dying and feeling like I had the controls to blame. You're in a sub, underwater. It takes a bit to build momentum once you start propulsion, and you're also going to float a bit once you stop or change direction. I thought the controls were actually tight enough, and paired with the boost, it just made navigating the seas a blast. When I finished the game, I hadn't yet had enough of the close-quarter dodging required in some of those last areas. It had a very reminiscent feel of some of the early shooters like Gradius and Life Force. Your first weapon is a magnetic claw, which serves as a dual role in both puzzle solving and functioning like a melee weapon. No sub is complete without torpedoes, which become your secondary method of combat, and additionally, eventually breaking down some barriers to gain access to new areas. Your weapons and thrown things will automatically lock onto the closest target in the direction you're facing, and there were very few times where it didn't read my desires well enough to place the reticle appropriately. Now, there are slightly fewer enemy types than I would have liked to have seen, as most come in the form of the jellyfish, urchins, anglers, crabs, and a couple of robotic mechanisms. And then there's a palette swap, indicating that they are more difficult. Additionally, the game's 6-hour campaign features only 2 bosses that are both defeated in kind of a similar manner. Perhaps keeping the difficulty steady for the average player stopped them from a bullet hell-like boss, but I mean the game features save points after nearly every obstacle, so you're rarely having to replay too much upon death, which otherwise is without penalty. Character progression comes from gathering gold found in treasures or killing enemies, and buying enhancements to found weapons from the local hermit crabs, who gather ancient technology and store in their shells. By the time I was on the way to the final boss, I had just hit the treasure count to have a fully upgraded machine. I had backtracked quite a bit, but I didn't get everything. You can also discover new gear to modify existing weapons scattered across the map in addition to life maximum up and time maximum up. Tying is basically the game's magic point used to power your advanced weapons. Now, one additional piece of equipment Marin gets is a shell that acts like a diving suit, allowing her to exit the sub and get into smaller holes that the sub can't. This is used for a few puzzles, one involving some crazy light bending that is definitely not for the colorblind. But this feature really reminded me a lot of Blaster Master on NES. So wait, we're up to 4 old school references now? Bravo, Insomniac. The game's other puzzles play out pretty uniquely, being as you're underwater, making moving the oft-detached statue head onto its pedestal a different experience than most. That said, there weren't really any puzzles too challenging aside from the aforementioned light one, which did take a few minutes. The environments in Song of the Deep are beautiful, ranging from coral reefs to ancient ruined cities to dark trenches. Nearly every screen is photo-worthy. That said, I did hit a few frame rate issues occasionally, which kind of surprises me. I'm not fully sure how the PS4 isn't capable enough of a machine to keep all of the things moving, especially because it wasn't even times with a lot of enemy activity that was the problem. A couple other graphical oddities here and there, especially during some light bending, but there's nothing else performance-wise that is game-stopping. Game-stop. Yeah, alright, sorry. The narrative is delivered like a children's book in its cutscenes, and prominent events and games also have the female Irish voiceover, just like its story time before bed. The soundtrack features several Celtic-sounding, fully orchestrated tunes. The setting here altogether is just very refreshing. Now, I know I talk about it quite often, but I have to go back to expectations. For those expecting some sort of upgrade to this genre, you're not going to find it here. Until someone makes a Skyrim-sized 40 to 60 hour RPG out of a 2D item procedural, I'm not sure we're going to have a 21st century breakthrough in this genre. Song of the Deep takes the exploration and secret-seeking made fun by the games of old, applies an underwater control scheme and theme, and puts hand-painted visuals and a child's fairy tale story with it. I've seen it referred to as an indie title, I've seen instant hate because it's 2D, and I honestly don't understand this frame of mind. We need a balance. We need games to keep coming out in multiple genres, and I'm definitely of the opinion that not everything has to be all shootery. Now, this is one place where my rating system excels, because rating this type of game the same way you rate another first-person shooter AAA title kinda gets you nowhere and misleads consumers. That said, now this game isn't quite as mysterious or flowing as Super Metroid was, nor does it quite reach the depth of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, nor does it quite hit the level of polish that Ori and the Blind Forest did. On a true 0 to 100 scale, though, for my 2D item procedural, or Blastroidvanius, it lands at a 73 out of 100. This is Jiro for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching. Trying to find the genres you like? Feel free to subscribe to the channel as I try to make the rounds. You can also find me on Twitter, @Umbra Games.